So I'm going to talk about virtual private servers, but VPSs on a budget. And just a little bit about what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about commercially available VPSs in the low end, which I'll describe, and those that are suitable for small purposes. These are not enterprise. This is like a hobbyist type of level of VPS. And I won't really go over the details of the virtualization technology because that's a whole other talk in itself. And I won't tell you how to set up a VPS provider, how to become a VPS provider. So what is a VPS? A VPS is a virtualized instance of some operating system. Normally in the commercial market out there, it's Linux. And you get a container, which is basically just a virtual machine inside of some larger hardware. And the private, I guess, is one of the features is that you're jailed off from other users and you really don't know who else is on your the node that you're using. And you're free generally to set up whatever you want on the server within the limits of your term of service. And so why would you use a VPS, say, for hosting a website versus other solutions? So why would you not use shared hosting? Well, a lot of my reasons for shared hosting are shown on this slide. One of the reasons is they're often way oversold. Literally hundreds or thousands of users on the same machine, all hitting the disk with their website or their PHP app. Security. On shared hosting, you're generally not jailed off from the other users except by permissions of your directory. So a break-in of the server itself could affect you. Lack of choice. If you don't want to run Apache for whatever reason, or say you wanted to run a server on a different port, that's either not possible or it's going to cost you extra. And things like SSL certificates, if you just want to install one real quick, it takes time for a ticket to go through and get the support people to set it up for you, even though you might know how to do it yourself in like 10 minutes. Why would you not want to use a home server over your DSL or cable modem? Well, bandwidth is a big issue. You might have a big download speed, but your upload is certainly not going to be as good. Power, as we've learned, power goes out, and unless you're maintaining a backup system at home, nobody's going to be able to get to your website. Your home server might be down and your smartphone is up, but you can't get to it because you have no power. And do you really want to maintain the infrastructure to keep your website or whatever project you're hosting up 24 hours a day? And reliability. Not all of us have rack mount servers tucked away in a room of their house to set up their project website. So all of these are disadvantages, can be advantages for the VPS. And they can be really cheap, as I'll show some of the specifications of some that I have actually purchased. You're your own administrator. And like I said, you can do whatever you want with it within the terms of service, and that varies from provider to provider. Basically, for some of them, it's just don't do anything illegal. For some of them, don't do anything illegal and don't run IRC. Generally, they're not as heavily oversold, and I say they're not as heavily oversold because VPS providers, like any service provider of computing resources, will oversell because people are not going to use the entirety of the server 100% all the time. So it's in their best interest to slightly or a little bit oversell. But there are some providers that, of course, vastly oversell. But I'll show you that you should do due diligence when you're researching this. And versus home hosting is pretty much the same issues as we saw on the last slide. So how does this differ from the cloud? Well, cloud instances are usually created on demand, or else you're going to pay more for a cloud instance that is always available. And your VPS is always going to be running because it's basically just a virtual server that's sitting there on some IP address. I'd say that the hardware for VPSs are generally better in terms of what they're hosting it on than cloud offerings, at least as far as the Amazon cloud, which is on commodity hardware. And you'll most likely get better disk I/O from a VPS than, say, using Amazon. There are different technologies that the providers use to provide you the VPS. One of them is OpenVZ, which is a open source variant of Virtuoso, which came out of Parallels, I believe. And it's the most prevalent type of VPS out there that you'll see. It's basically an operating system level virtualization, such as BSD jails or Solaris zones. And one of the downsides, I guess, or maybe the upside, is that you can only have Linux guests, because basically you're basically just running processes within a partition on the host machine. And they allocate memory as guaranteed plus burst memory. And burst memory is taking from a shared pool of memory, which may or may not be available depending on what other users are doing. So it's possible that even though it says you have 1 gig total available, that you won't get it because someone is using more than their share of the server. And there's a claim that there's only a 1 to 3% performance decline of an OpenVZ guest versus the host operating system. And then there's also Zen and KVM, similar but a little bit different. As far as the Zen offerings I've seen, usually they're modified guest para-virtualization offerings, where the Linux or whatever operating system the kernel has to be specifically modified so that they can load into the Zen virtualization. But KVM is always native virtualization, which is why you can't run KVM on older hardware. It needs hardware-assisted virtualization. But generally you get part of the memory of the system, and that's why these are more expensive, because they can't put as many Zen or KVM instances on the same host. And yes?
What about Oracle's VirtualBox?
Well, VirtualBox, I think it's actually CPU translation, right?
No, it actually does full hardware virtualization. It's free.
I've never seen anybody offer that for sale.
No, not for sale. Okay.
I'm talking about what you could actually go on the internet, type in, and buy.
Okay.
So also, the advantage may be that you want to run an operating system other than Linux, say BSD. You could do that with Zen or KVM. And supposedly it's near native, but that's as far as the CPU. But there's a lot of hit you're taking in as far as I/O and network going through the host. So what is a low-end VPS? Well, as the name probably tells you, it has lower specs than you probably would feel comfortable with running at home or running your server applications on. But there are ways to get around that. I'd say the CPUs that they use on different providers varies a lot. But they don't when they sell these, they don't really tell you. When they advertise a certain price point and specifications, they don't generally advertise the CPU as part of it. They're mainly touting the memory, the RAM, plus the disk space that you get, and the network bandwidth. So sometimes that can be hit or miss. Because it's a low end, there's no technical support. These are unmanaged servers, so if you have any issues with what you're doing on your server, you're kind of on your own, which is why these things are priced so low. Many of these companies do offer additional support, but you have to pay extra for that type of offering. So what could you use these for? Well, if you have a low traffic website, I mean, the LUG website certainly would be low traffic. I mean, if you have your own photo gallery for your family, that's not going to take a lot of hits. Something you could do on a VPS you couldn't do on a shared hosting is run, say, an ERP application, which needs to load up on non-standard ports and doesn't use Apache and needs to have a daemon running all the time. Or you want your own Dropbox. You just need SSH and you have some disk space somewhere and you can use it that way. I've actually seen some companies offering Minecraft servers as an option, a specific type of VPS you can buy, which they say is tailored for hosting Minecraft. I can tell you afterwards. And IRC servers. People still want to put up IRC servers for some reason. But there are a lot of providers that don't let you run IRC because of, I guess, piracy issues. There's a lot of piracy on certain IRC networks. Here's an example of one of the VPSs that's an OpenVZ, which is probably the lowest end you can get. 128 megabytes of guaranteed memory with 256 bursts. That means a total of 256 is available. So 256 minus 128 is what the actual amount of burst is. 15 gigs of disk space and 500 gigs of bandwidth a month, which I've only used up once, using it as a proxy and an IPv4 address, and it was only $15 a year. So, yes. And the Unix benchmark score here, kind of, I put these on the slide so you can compare them to each other. I tried to look up some numbers for comparable desktop, but they were kind of older numbers. But this is probably half the speed of a computer from a couple years ago, as far as the Unix benchmark, which measures not just CPU, but also disk and network and stuff. Actually, I don't think it does network, but it's the system performance. It's not just how fast it can compute numbers. But you can run Unix bench on any Unix machine and compare your numbers if you want. And so I'm actually not using much disk space on this, so 15 gigs is actually quite a decent amount to run a Linux installation. And here's a really low-end Zen, which only has 8 megabytes of real memory. The rest of it's swap, and 3 gigabytes of disk space. And it's a lot slower as far as the Unix benchmark than the other one. But it does cost a little bit more, $36 a year. And the bandwidth's a little lower. And here's another OpenVZ from another company. So all three of these examples are from different companies. This one is more expensive, but that's primarily because I bought 5 IPv4 addresses for SSL certificates and added disk space to it. And as you can see, the Unix benchmark score is a lot better than the other two. So here's where you go if you wanted to buy one of these type of VPSs. Pretty much any company now sends their offers to this website. This guy started out just basically reposting offers from this website, but now he has enough offers going to his inbox that he basically can be selective on what he puts on the website. And this is a great place to go and look for what the comments are on what people say about the provider, which is very important. So Web Hosting Talk's another one. There's a forum called VPS Hosting Offers. So here's some of my rules of thumb that I've seen over a bit of time. I'd say $7 a month or more is probably not a low-end box anymore. That's when you start getting to higher-end VPSs. So I would say 7 or below is a low-end box. $5 a month is just about the most common price point. And I don't put exact specifications here because the way the providers do things is they price them and then put up the specifications. So there's a lot of variation what you can get for $5. And there are a lot of yearly offers are becoming more common and popular because it's a way to kind of get people into your company and maybe they'll buy something, a more powerful VPS from you later.
What do you mean by yearly? They offer it every year?
No, I mean you don't pay per month, you pay per year. So they get their money up front. They don't even offer the option to let you pay per month. Some of them let you pay per quarter. But for these type of low ball offers, there are certain companies that actually have low ball offers, which actually are pretty good. But those sell out very quickly. I think the last time this one company offered their $15 a month, it sold out in like 30 minutes after it was posted. And they will be having stock sometime next year, if you're interested. So you would have to check their Twitter feed and be very quick to go order one of these. But certainly check the comments on the forum on Web Hosting Talk or Low Inbox about the provider, because if you read them, there will be a lot of comments like, oh, this is okay. Then there'll be like a lot of them that say, oh, this is garbage. So take with a grain of salt. It's kind of like the Yelp comments we saw earlier. You kind of have to read all the comments to get a gist of what the company is like. There are some companies that you should just stay away from, and you'll pretty much know that just by reading the comments. And this last bullet point is very important. It's a very fluid market. There's a lot of people getting into it and getting out. That's because it's very easy to set up this type of company. All you need is a dedicated server and some Linux software, and you are a VPS provider. But a lot of these companies don't have sustainable business models, and so they go out of business. So you have to be careful on putting your $15 in someone's hands that might not be there in 6 months. Or you might buy the VPS and then the performance is okay in the beginning and then the performance degrades. So that comes with the territory of it being a very cheap commodity. But you might think, how could I actually run something on this VPS? Well, you're going to have to do a lot of trimming. Certainly you're not going to be able to run Apache. But there are other options. Lite or Nginx are very popular. Actually, Nginx is more popular than Lite. I think it's like one of the top 3 or something web server software out there. If you're going to use MySQL, you can turn off the features you don't need, lower the buffers and the caches, turn off anything you don't need, like you don't need the cups printer daemon running, so turn that off. Going even further, you could use Dropbear instead of OpenSSH, and that'll cut out like a couple megabytes. This is really going megabyte by megabyte to squeeze out a server that can run on these low-end boxes. And there are plenty of guides out there on how to do this. The low-end box guy actually said, yes, you can run 18 different static websites on one 128 megabyte website, VPS.
Wow.
Static.
Of course.
Some tips, I guess. Write a script as you set up your VPS to replicate your install. You don't have to go so far as using something like Chef, but just a shell script or something that does all your apt-gets or your yum installs. Because if you need to reinstall the VPS, you're gonna have to reinstall from a template that doesn't have all your modifications to it. And also, if you use multiple VPSs, you would want to have something that lets you quickly set up the other ones the way you like it. Install things like Tripwire, Port Sentry, Fail2Ban, Logwatch. Use IP tables.
Which of those do you like?
All of them.
You use all of them on your VPSs?
Yeah. I mean, these don't really. These are really low cost things to put on. I mean, Fail2Ban on most distributions, you just install it and it works. Because what it does is it watches the SSH log, and if it sees multiple attempts for a login failing, it'll actually put an IP table rule to ban that IP from trying to get into SSH. Or you could actually tell it to ban that IP completely. Port Sentry actually opens up a bunch of ports as kind of a honeypot, so that if somebody's port scanning you, it'll be able to detect that. And then you can put an IP table rule to keep that person from trying to do additional attacks. And just setting these up on any server, you'll see there are a lot of hits from IP addresses from other VPSs or from cloud hosting providers where people are running their intrusion scripts. LogWatch is great because it'll send you an email every day. You can see who tried to log in, if there's failed logins, or if there's attempts to break into Apache. It'll read the Apache access log and error log, and it'll actually see if there's 403s or 400s where people are trying to use web intrusion methods like putting stuff into the MySQL string and trying to intrude that way.
The only thing that really takes much memory there is
Tripwire
IP
memory,
tables,
as in terms of
like RAM, like IP tables is using kernel memory. And it's going to
Right.
allocate in pages anyway, so you're only going to get like 4 or 8K at a time, so it's not a big deal. LogWatch is a cron job. Fail to ban probably takes like 100K of RAM to run. And port entry is really minimal, but Tripwire uses probably megs of memory time.
You mean when it's actually doing a check? Because it's run, the way I run is through a cron job.
Oh, Tripwire, you're just doing scans. You're not doing
Yeah.
active
No.
IP.
Yeah, if you can just, basically once you have your VPS set up, you run Tripwire to scan your system. It records all the modification times, which inode it's on, the file is on, how big it is, so that if a file changes, you will know. And you can have it send you and it's protected by a password, of course, this database. So you should set that up as soon as you set up your VPS. Otherwise, you won't know after the fact whether or not it's actually been broken into. Somebody could have already put in a file that you're now thinking is legitimate when it's not. And I would always back up everything. Run an rsync job that pulls from your VPS to your home every night, because, as I said, some of these providers disappear overnight. If you buy from a good company, this won't happen to you. If you're taking a gamble, it might. I would have multiple VPSs so that you could deploy to another if one goes down. Maybe there's network issues on one of them, or you could simply change the IP address to your website quickly and have it go to the other VPS. And buy from multiple companies. Don't buy from the same company every time. And I guess just have fun, try it out. And if you're not good with server administration, you'll learn a lot about that. You'll be forced to, because you have no support for these unmanaged VPSs. And you can utilize it for whatever you want. And that's all I have.
15 bucks a year.
Yeah.
Wow.
You'll be able to find those probably in January, so they say. But if you IRC private message this one guy, he might be able to hook you up earlier.
I'm shocked.
And I didn't mention any company names here because I didn't want to promote any one company over another.
That's okay.
But there are some. There is actually on Low End Talk. There's actually a list of the top rated providers for the last quarter, which is a very good place to start from. And if you read these blogs a lot, you'll get a sense of who is actually somebody that could stick around for a couple years and who is just a fly-by-night.
What is your proxying experience? Are you streaming video, and are the sites up to that?
I accidentally streamed video through it and ran out of my bandwidth, actually. But
So
I actually used.
bandwidth.
Say again?
What happens when you run it?
It'll give you an email message saying you're within 1% of going over your monthly limit, and then you stop. Or you switch to a different. If you have multiple VPSs, 500 gigs, per $15 VPS, you just switch to the other one and use that.
But if you run over your monthly limit, do they just shut?
I think so,
Okay.
unless you put in a support ticket and say yes, I'll pay for additional bandwidth. It depends on the company. There are some companies that are run by assholes. There are some that are run by nice guys.
I've used
I'm serious.
a VPS as a video reflector and streamed from a camera and production type station. It was RTSP, H.264 codec stuff, and only had maybe 4 or 5 clients at once receiving from it. But it was a pretty mid-tier VPS. The Unix bench would have been faster than 7 or 800. It would have been a more performant VPS as far as CPU. But it barely scratched the CPU at all because the video streaming stuff is just mostly I/O counting. It doesn't do lots of computation. So you can actually use a pretty low-end machine and probably stream video to a few dozen clients at once. But have you seen where they cap not total amount of aggregate bandwidth per month, but total amount of maximum concurrent bandwidth?
I haven't seen that.
Okay.
I've actually seen some offerings of unmetered bandwidth. So it's unlimited, but it's, say, on a 10 megabit line instead of 100.
Yeah, that would kill video reflecting pretty quick.
And people say, oh, I could just set up a video site, but those unmetered ones usually have low disk space, so you can't just upload a bunch of videos and just serve them out through that.
There's also, if you don't want to go through a company, there's Los Angeles is a co-op, VPS co-op that they basically they have some beefy machine in downtown LA, and they split the bill annually with whoever's signed up, and so they have unmetered bandwidth, and as long as the average over the month of what everyone uses is under their limit, then you get a bunch of disk space and memory too.
Yeah, you could certainly buy an Atom dedicated machine for 100 or something a month and split that a couple people, and that's the way you could go. I think one of the free shell companies actually offers, well, not companies, but Silent Defense Fortress or something. There's this very old BSD group of people that have free shells accounts that you can get if you donate like $36 one time or something. But they also offer BSD VPSs, should you want one, for a nominal fee, of course. They're not free. There's actually sometimes you can see free VPS offers. The company wants people to test out the VPS, and because they're setting up, they're using a new kernel version, and they want to see if there's any problems with it. And the one company I saw doing that actually would kill any accounts that were not using any resources. So if your VPS was sitting idle, they would just shut off your account because they wanted it to be tested.
Amazon EC2 has a free instance, but it's pretty minimal.
It's probably so you can set up your ANI so you can then deploy it on other instances.
It's pretty small and minimal.
And these are what you can actually do as far as setting up an image is very minimal because of the I forget the system they use, Solus VM or whatever. They have pre-canned templates that you can use to install different distributions, Ubuntu, Debian, Fedora, CentOS, Arch Linux. But you can't do anything more than just install from that pre-canned template. You can't upload your own template, which you can do on some of the more expensive VPS companies like, Linode or SliceHost will actually let you upload an image. And as I've tried to say, don't use these for anything that you are trying to make money off of, because if you're going to make money, you can probably pay more. Use these for your hobby or for your personal website or something. Or maybe you start an open source project, host it on a VPS instead of paying GitHub to host on their website, because it's godly expensive in comparison to use GitHub's hosting if you take into account the limitations of their database size and their disk space.
It's kind of an unrelated question, but what font is your titles?
It's whatever the Google Doc theme.
It looks like the
Selected.
font on a Radio Shack product.
Could be. Oh, and this is all public domain clip art. I didn't rip anybody off.
How did you make sure it was public domain?
The website told me it's public domain. No, it was
Pre-censored.
user uploaded stuff to a known public domain website. Or from free. There's actually a Creative Commons clip art database that's actually down right now. But some of the other websites have actually indexed into it and have copies. And I don't do anything fancy with my VPSs. I just run like a photo gallery and WordPress. I mean, WordPress is fine for any of these VPSs.
So what was the name of the Minecraft host?
I think it's 123 Systems, but a lot of people don't like them because the guy that runs it is supposedly a jerk.
Supposedly a jerk.
Well, there's a lot of stories about he insults his customers and the tickets and when they're on the IRC or something. But one of the other VPS companies, which is actually the guy is a really nice guy, and he's like always sitting on IRC helping people, even though it's unmanaged. He actually knows that other guy is a jerk, and so it's kind of some of the.
It's the same guy. He just like
Copycat.
charges more for the next guy.
If I could give a recommendation, I would say buy VM, which is the name of their website, not go buy. Let me open a. I don't think I'm actually connected, so. Oh, I am. And you can probably see their price points if you load their website. So it's buyvm.net, not .com. Somebody bought the .com and put an iframe that points to this website for some reason. It's like an invisible iframe, and I guess they wanted to put Google ads or something. I don't know. So you can see their price points here. Oh, and this one at the top is the one I have. And if you notice, it says CPU's 1 core. Even though when I did the proc info, this proc CPU info, it said 4. I guess it was lying.
Well, the system has 4 probably that it's running on.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. I think OpenVZ probably just passes through the proc info from the host, and you don't actually. It isn't always reflective of what you have. But if you look at another website. That actually I don't think is run by VM themselves. You'll see that they don't have any stock.
This you don't have stock. There's a website just for
Seriously. Because I think there's a certain obsessive collector quality to people that buy a lot of these. I can certainly say I suffer from that. It may be sitting idle, but at least you have it if you need it.
So this is like the special you saw in Slickfield?
Say again?
It's like the special you saw in Slickfield, basically?
No, I mean, this company came through Low End Box. So that's the clearinghouse. But if you want to get in within the 30-minute window before it sells out, you probably want to watch their Twitter feed or subscribe to their announcement mailing list. Or sometimes they post announcements to their IRC channel without posting it to either of those two.
So who is buyvm.xx?
And the other company, I don't know, I can't recommend them to you because people have said different things about them, and oops, I don't think that's it. I probably should search for it. Wait a minute. Maybe they were taken.
No, you correct the answer.
Okay. Let me see if they have Minecraft. Let's see. Oh, here it is, Minecraft slots. So I don't... There you go. That's their... They might actually have the server-only template for you, so all you have to do is buy it and then...
That's per year, right? They don't tell you.
No, that's per month.
Per month, could be per week.
That's most likely per month.
What's the slot?
I've never actually played Minecraft, so
That was a Minecraft thing.
I have no idea. I don't know if it's
I think
licensing.
that's the number
or-
of players in that server.
But is it limited by license or is it limited by the
It's limited by-
amount of
You
seat
can have
RAM?
in the config, you can specify how many users are on the system.
They'd probably be by active connections.
Well, they probably just pre-can a template that
Yeah.
they install for you. And there's no reason, and they probably do it because there are people that'll buy these without knowing anything about how to change it, and just be perfectly fine that it's working and it's not, down or anything, and not go in and change it. Kind of like with how people sell PHP software.
So what do people do with Minecraft? I mean, I was doing a YouTube search, I landed on some stuff. Someone's
Anything you want.
They've done Titanic. They've done the entire Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise.
That's what people do with
And you
Minecraft.
walk through, I mean, they don't have all the depth, a lot of the decks of the Titanic. For the Enterprise, I was walking around the bottom and look up this huge thing. It's like in the Star Trek reboot, where you're walking underneath the Enterprise A. This one, you're walking around D, and the whole ship is above you. And I can't believe people build this stuff.
It's virtual very, very creative people. If you look up Voxel Box videos on YouTube, amazing designs.
Turing complete computers.
Yeah, people build computers.
That's another thing.
Somebody actually animated the opening to Mario, the Game Boy Mario, and they did it by redoing each frame. So they made 30. It was 30 frames per second. So they redid the Minecraft field over and over, just to film a video.
Yeah. But the big thing is the whole red stuff. It's building processors, building displays. You can get into some really crazy stuff. But yes, people actually build real working CPUs in there.
It's just like open world, like literally build the world you want to play it.
But it's graphically, that's the amazing thing.
It's still the adventure part too. There's something where you don't have to build. You can go out and kill things, explore the world.
I think the guy that wrote it, he was actually unemployed when he wrote it. Is that true?
I think so.
So he's probably pretty well off right now as far as selling licenses to it.
So he just left the other day. I heard he's not working on that game.
Oh yeah.
No, his company, I forget what it's some
Mojang.
they're starting a new game.
And it made voxel games popular, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say.
So these VPSs, are they all on the West Coast or East Coast?
Oh, actually, that's a good point. It depends. This one's in Dallas. Dallas is there's some primary locations where these things are hosted. There's either Hurricane Electric up in Fremont is a big place. Dallas, there's a lot. I've seen some in Oklahoma. I've seen some in New Jersey, New York. There's some in Los Angeles. I haven't seen a lot of low-end ones in Los Angeles.
Hurricane Electric will also do, if you want, a free IP6 to 4 tunnel and your DNS hosting for free as
Right,
well.
right.
And they have a really reliable service. They've been around for almost 20, 25 years.
And
About some major internet pipe kind of stuff up in Northern California.
they're good ping time. I mean, Hurricane Electric actually runs a second-tier backbone.
Yeah, they were a major pipe on the internet way back when, and they basically have gotten into VPS and low-end services as a function, but they still have their big commercial
Right,
stuff.
right. They don't. Hurricane Electric doesn't sell the VPSs directly. They sell rack space and dedicated servers to people that actually sell the VPSs. So you can't go to. I think they might sell them directly to you, but they'll be very expensive. So you'd want to go through a secondary dealer.
But you want to go with a dealer that uses them because their facilities and their infrastructure is extremely well rated.
And BuyVM is one of the ones that uses Hurricane Electric. Actually, I don't know if anybody knows about this website, woot.com. Whenever there's a bag of crap offered, their servers are basically kind of denial of serviced. But I actually used one of these VPSs as a proxy, and I think it helped me get a bag of crap because I was able to proxy through it over like a faster backbone. That's my theory. I don't know if it's true.
That's an interesting theory.
They have a bot running somewhere right off Hurricane Electric. You're getting straight to their server somehow.
For some reason, things run. I've had stuff run faster through the proxy than a direct connection sometimes. But that might be because of content filtering at work.
You're one of those.
Well, it's not content filtering. It's more that this is a naughty website. You can't go to it.
So are there,
Or it's a website that actually has it's a parked website.
I think they actually banned. I was trying to go to BuildBot's website, and I couldn't directly go there. So I had to go through a proxy just to get to a legitimate open source website.
I have to look up some Java doc, because WebSense, like the Java util.date class, says, oh, you're trying to look for dates. Blocked. So I have a question.
Yep.
I'm interested in servers that might be pre-configured, or a hosting provider that is interested in IRC service hosting, JabberD or Jabber server hosting, or some other high chatty, not so much high bandwidth, but high chatty connection establishment and teardown kind of stuff.
I don't know if any of them have pre-canned templates for IRC or Jabber. I think there might.
They might be friendly to having you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I run my own Jabber server on one of them. You just have to look at their terms of service, or put in a support ticket and say, "Can I do this?"
Which Jabber server do you use?
Prosody, whatever.
Kind of pertinent to the first part of the meeting where we were discussing the SOPA stuff. My thought for 6 months now has been I just need to learn the Diaspora environment and Facebook and equivalent functionality should be in a shared, nothing distributed architecture, right? Is there a provider, is there a business opportunity to basically sell?
I don't know.
Here's your $5 a month to host all your social media, photos, and social life, and then it will plug in, to.
You mean as using a VPS to do a software as a service company? Because I've seen recently things like that, but it's not. We give you a VPS to host it. It's more like this is hosted on our servers.
I'm thinking more of the advantage of Diaspora over Facebook, as I understand it, is you can have all these nodes. There's no central owner. So it's the Jabber/IRC kind of model. You've got many players, and you can then, from one server to another, reach across the network and build a path to
Right.
information.
That's the theory.
That's the theory. But it's the whole distributed model where there's no central point of failure.
Well, you could look at maybe status.net, which is a free open source software.
I guess what I'm curious is, do you see VPSs turning into, say I'm Joe User, and I just want to have my social network, I want to have my service that I can go buy $6 a month to put a server.
For a small community, you mean? Or
For a small community,
Yeah, certainly.
to plug into a bigger, like fractionalize how everybody uses Facebook if Diaspora does take off.
I've heard a lot of disappointment about Diaspora.
It's not everything is cracked up to be there.
Status.net actually does a lot of the stuff that now, after several iterations, that Diaspora was intending to do. And it is all distributed. So you can set up a status.net instance, and you can follow people on a different server.
Okay.
And when you follow them, it'll push notices to your server.
So it's a status.net protocol or implementation.
It's OAuth, I think, is what it's called.
I mean the status updates, not the security. They have their own
Or whatever.
implementation.
Yeah, it's a standard. Google Buzz used the same technology. I forget what the name of the protocol
So,
is.
do you know of VPSs that provide, or would you have to just set a standard template and install this?
I would say it's pretty easy to install this one, except that, and you would probably need a VPS for this anyways if you want to get the full functionality of status.net, because there are some daemons you need to run to kind of pull and pull things instead of waiting for somebody to query a web string.
Or anything about proto-buffers?
Again?
Proto-buffers? What do you think? That's what you're thinking of? Or?
I was thinking of, I don't remember. You could probably just do status.net Wikipedia and we'll find the answer.
Cool.
Oh, status. There you go.
Okay. Maybe it uses OAuth for the ID and authentication.
It can.
And then O status is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm really interested now. I know that.
And it used to be kind of a Twitter clone, but I think they've kind of pushed beyond that. The only downside, I think, is that I ran it for a while, but then I stopped because the people I was following weren't very interesting. And because and if you run your own kind of isolated instance where it's just you on that one server, you're not going to have people following you because they can't see you because they don't know where you are. So maybe for a small community,
that's
it's
the
fine.
disadvantage of the distributed social network is we're all back to running our own website. But if there's an O-status protocol and we could start to link these together, you could get away from the Facebook central authority of everything, and you basically have a cluster or a cloud of people building a social network.
And there's another.
Like Jabber tried to do with the Federation, right?
Right, so it's federated. When I say distributed, I mean federated as well, right? So
There's a new. I think this is it. Is it Open Photo? No, it's not Open Photo. There's this guy that actually quit his job at Yahoo to work on a. I think this is it. On a photo kind of distributed photo thing.
So you all run your own node, and then you don't
Or-
use Flickr or whatever. You post your own content, but everybody can search and find it if they use this.
Actually, this one's not exactly that, but some people want it to be that. They've kind of given him comments on that, but right now it's basically it aggregates everything from the different websites to one place as a backup. Or I think he only added this after people commented, "What does this actually do?" Because his initial version of this website didn't really tell you what it did. It's kind of a way that he actually did a Kickstarter project. He got $25,000 and to start this open source project. And he wanted something where all your photos scattered across the web kind of come to one place. And you're pulling it off the third-party websites so that you own it. So he believes in data ownership. And he wrote this as kind of a way to kind of take back ownership of stuff you have distributed out there on all these other websites.
There is one out there also that was a Kickstarter kind of thing, I guess, but was going to be like a Flickr kind of thing you could run in a VPS. I don't know what that one's called anymore.
There are a couple PHP Flickr clones out there, I think. But I don't think there's any like Flickr type of aggregate, distributed photo stream that kind of just pushes photos around. But I think there's a niche for that maybe. So yeah, you could run stuff like this. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention that I just remembered while we were talking. Data ownership is what we've been talking about right now. Well, if you get your own domain name, whatever, you can run your own email server. So you're running all your email through something that you control. And you can actually run your own Jabber server. So when you talk with your Gtalk friends, you can be you@you.com instead of you@gmail.com. And Jabber will your Jabber server will server-to-server communicate with Google Talk. Just be aware that server-to-server communication with Google Talk is not encrypted. They don't actually allow you to use encryption to contact the Google servers on server-to-server. In that case, use off-the-record encryption, maybe. But
Why
yeah,
do you think they wouldn't encrypt it? They're trying to discourage people from using it, or?
I don't think anybody knows the reasoning. It's just that when you actually set up your own Jabber server and you're trying to talk to Google, and you say, "Oh, I want it to be secure because I don't want people sniffing as it goes from there to there."
I would actually wager against that the client-to-server authentication is based upon your profile password. Right? So they use that as a hash. You probably put in your username and password. You probably use that hash to encrypt your client session. So there's some uniqueness to the encryption. It's not just the same password for all client users. But I'm guessing that the server-server protocol is not implemented with any type of, I can just set random server password and it works. They would need an administrator to put in a password for each other server, or to give you a web interface or a control panel to establish what that key needs to be. So if you do a user connection into GTalk. They know your user, they know your password, and they can set up a hash and they can encrypt things. They don't know your server password, and they're not going to know your server password unless they put a profile username on it or whatever. So a Jabber server to have a password on the other end needs to have some account manager or something to recognize your server. It would be a lot of maintenance and a lot of overhead.
Well, yeah, or it could be.
I thought it would just be normal SSL.
Yeah, they could do that, right? It could be like your HTTPS is.
It'd be untrusted SSL.
I don't know the reason.
Google probably has a valid certificate, whereas most of your third-party people just have their own servers. They're not going to shell out $150.
I would not trust based upon SSL encryption layer without the SSL PKI that I actually know the ID of that certificate on the other end of the server connection.
Oh, and if you do need a certificate and you don't want to actually pay any money, you can use this website. That you'll get certificates that actually are authenticated against the root certificate authority.
I
So
recently got one from them, but I'm curious what happens at the end of the first year.
it just expires.
Do they charge you?
No, they don't charge you.
They don't charge you?
No, you just have to go generate a new one. And they actually have jabbers.
They're fairly, you can say they're low assurance too.
Right, but
They'll sell you high assurance ones. The problem is a lot of your ISPs have blocked their SSLs because then they can't sell their own.
if you wanted to set one up so that your client, whenever you're going to your website, doesn't complain, has that little red box.
And for that, I also use CA cert, and I also build my own CA for personal servers as well. But no, this root bundle is in a lot of browsers and stuff, so it's different than the CA cert approach.
Yeah, it's
CA cert's been fighting that for 7 years.
so you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a server, but you get what you pay for.
What about DNS?
Yeah, you can set your own DNS, but I wouldn't do my own DNS. There's plenty of, you use Hurricane Electric and if you do DNS, you're going to probably want to set up 2 servers at least on different providers and have them slaved. Actually, one of the things that a lot of these VPS providers get dinged on is when people go look up, what's this company? If you look at some of these blog postings, they'll be like, oh, this company was registered the domain name, just a year ago. Then they'll actually look at where their DNS is hosted. And if they're hosted on the same IP as the website, that's kind of a red flag that this is probably not a serious company. Or if they only have one DNS server set up. So there's a lot of forensic investigation of these companies before people buy them. Which can be fun, I guess. You use robotext to go figure out things. Does anybody know about robotext? Is that what it's called? Robotext. Robotext. Yeah, no, that's not it. There's a website that actually has a bunch of records of who owns the IP addresses, and you can do better than just the reverse DNS.
No, but Aaron.net.
RoboX, I forget what it's called. I forget. It's something like that.
Okay, I think I know what you're talking about, but I can't think of what it is either.
It's a hard to name. IP address lookup robo something. No, that's not it. I don't know. It's
RoboStat is not it?
It's something EX. It's like Robex or I don't know. I'm not going to find it. Somehow I found it the other day without actually looking at my bookmarks. I don't know if I should show you all my bookmarks.
If you go to your address bar and just take Robo and you do the decent history.
Yeah, I was doing that,
No, you do it on Google search with your average plugger.
Hmm.
I saw something pop up.
Dot rob text. There you go.
That's what.
So I don't know what I was looking up. I think I was looking up somebody that was port scanning me to see, you know, who it was. It's like a. Actually, no, that was actually someone's internet in Hawaii, home internet. So yeah, you could use this if you get port scan to see, you know, where it's coming from. And I think it has blacklists too. Yeah, so you could check if it's in a blacklist. And I think there's actually probably some software you can install on your machine to just download a blacklist and just use IP tables on that blacklist and just do a whitelist approach to who you allow into your VPS. If you're that paranoid about your illegal torrent server. Yeah, don't run torrent servers. That's usually against the terms of service. They can tell, you know, that you're running that. I don't have anything else.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Have something for next month, right?
Dan and I were going to do a little bit of a troubleshooting and report.